Okay, it's 6:30, so we would like to start the session. Just for your information, this session is going to be recorded. Okay, good evening. Thank you all for being with us this evening. Despite of the last minute time change, we really appreciate your presence. Hope you can relax at home and enjoy today's presentation. My name is Teruko Nesbet, Cultural Program Coordinator for Japan-America Society, Greater Cincinnati. I would like to welcome all of you to our webinar session titled Capital of Japonism is in the US, Cincinnati in the late 19th century. This is one of our many cultural programs we were able to schedule thanks to the generous support from Japan Foundation Center of Global Partnership and Frost Brown Todd. Today's presenter is Dr. Hou-mei Sang. Dr. Sang has been curator of East Asian art at the Cincinnati Art Museum since 2002. She received her PhD in museum studies from Case Western Reserve University. Prior to coming to Cincinnati, she served a variety of research and teaching positions in museum and academic fields in Asia and the United States. Her research on the Ming Court painting received a Fulbright scholarship in 2000. She has organized numerous exhibitions, including Rolling Tiger, Leaping Carp, 2009, and Terracotta Army, Legacy of the First Emperor of China, 2018, and has over 15 publications. This is just a short version of her biography, but with this, we are going to start Dr. Sang's presentation. We have 15 minutes Q&A session at the end, so please use the Q&A box and send us the question. Okay, so now, finally, we would like to hand this over to Dr. Hou-mei Sang. Dr. Sang, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Teruko, for the introduction. And I'm really great honored to be part of the Japan-America Society's this program in Cincinnati. And most people, when they consider the capital of Japonisme, they think of Boston. But the fact is, Cincinnati deserves the same title, if not more so. And so in this lecture, I will use Cincinnati Art Museum's masterpieces to introduce this city's early connection with Japan in the 19th century, in the late 19th century. Cincinnati's Japanese art collection is one of the earliest in the United States. Actually, it started in 1881, but it was a little known and a little explored, and mainly because we didn't have a Japanese gallery, and so very few of the objects were displayed, displayed. And in 2014, I published a catalog and did some research. And after my research, I discovered that this collection is very important. It includes many masterpieces, very rare masterpieces. And more significantly, the core of this collection was shaped by waves of Japanese culture and art exchange between the two cities of Cincinnati and Japan. And in other words, this collection chronicles Cincinnati's local wave of Japanese mania in the 19th century. And these exchanges were made possible by a large and tightly knit group of local elites and artists. Here, I will highlight a few of them and introduce how they helped shape the Cincinnati Art Museum's Japanese art collection. First, I will focus on painting. Japanese painting, the major donors are Joseph Toms and Robert Bloom. First, I will introduce Joseph Toms. Joseph Toms visited Japan in 1897 and acquired a large group of Japanese paintings, screens, and woodblock prints through the advice of Ernest Fenollosa. Fenollosa was a key figure in shaping Japanese art world in the 19th century, not only in Japan, but also in the United States. He was invited to Japan to teach in the then Tokyo University in 1878. And then he became deeply involved in the Japanese art world. And Fenollosa's advice to the Japanese government and ensured the survival of the indigenous Japanese tradition. And after he returned to the US in 1890, he became the curator of Asian art in the Museum of Fine Art, Boston. And Toms from Cincinnati, when he visited Japan, he received a great deal of advice from Fenollosa and started purchasing Japanese art. So I will introduce the paintings donated by Joseph Toms. The first one I select is this screen. The title of this screen is Presentation of Prints. And this was attributed to Chiyo Mitsuhisa. And the subject is depiction of the first chapter of Genji, the presentation of a prince. And this is the only Japanese surviving paintings attributed to a female artist, Chiyo Mitsuhisa. And Chiyo was one of the very few Japanese painters that we know today. She was the daughter of Tosa Mizunobu and the wife of Kano Motonobu. So his father, Tosa Mizunobu, was really the head of the court painting bureau in the late 16th century. And he was the chief artist of the Ashikaga shogunate. And Chiyo's wife, Chiyo's husband, Kano Motonobu, you probably all know, it's a major Kano school early painter. And Chiyo's son, Kano Shoei, became also a leading Kano master. Until 17th century, the Tosa school worked for the court, mainly dominated, Tosa school painter dominated in the court and was favored by the court. So Chiyo's father was the leading leader in the court group. After her father passed away, her husband, Kano Motonobu, took over the management of the Tosa family affairs and contributed to making Kano School the official painting school of the shogun. So Chiyo's important role at this time and the interaction of the two painting schools is a very significant one. And her marriage represented not only the union of the two leading masters of the two major schools, but also changed the course of Japanese art history development, because from her husband of the Tosa who was leading the Tosa school, to her husband, who was dominant in the Kano school, this transition or change was happened because of the marriage. And even though Chiyo herself was overshadowed by her father and her husband, and today we know so little about her, but she was only known today as an illustrator for Genji related books. But through this screen, we can see she was an outstanding female painter. And this painting was considered so important by the Japanese scholars that in 2013, the National Research Institute for Cultural Properties in Tokyo helped us restore it in Japan. And I'd like to show you the before and after picture. This is the before, the colored portion were the damaged part and restored, and this is after. And I also want to show you a picture of the team who worked on this. This is when I visited how they worked on this screen. And the other important painting from this group, from Joseph Tom's collection, is this Hokusai painting depicting of a woman reading a theater program. And this is one of the earliest, the Japanese scholar identified this painting as dated to the third period or the middle period of Hokusai's work, lifetime work. And this is the second Hokusai from this collection, depicts a sunflower. And this is also a very important work because it was painted when Hokusai was 88 years old, 2 years before he died. And it represents Hokusai's late masterpieces. And in 2019, both of these Hokusai works were shipped to Japan to participate in the major Hokusai updated show in Tokyo. And you can see the sunflower shows Hokusai's very striking and bold design, and the dynamic brushwork also shows Hokusai's skill and overall how he created a unique expression. And through the vibrant colors of the fully bloomed flower, the tall, straight, and the tenacious stem, I believe this may well be a self-portrait of the old artist who had produced this spectacular final bloom. Okay, next, I would like to introduce the other major contributor to our Japanese painting. This is Robert Bloom. He was a major American painter, but he was a native of Cincinnati, but he visited Japan for 3 years from 1890 to 1892. He went to Japan as an illustrator on a commission from the Scribner's magazine. Bloom was accompanied by the Japanese dealer Hiromichi Shugio, who was a collector and dealer of Japanese woodblock prints. He was sent to the U.S. by the Japanese government in order to acquire the English language skill and the foreign trade experiences. In 1880, Shugio became the director of the first Japanese trading company in New York. And he introduced, when he accompanied Bloom to Japan, he introduced Robert Bloom to many of the leading figures in the Japanese art world. And while they were in Japan, Robert Bloom developed a very strong interest in Japanese art. And with Shukio's help, built a large collection of Japanese art, including about 600 woodblock prints and a set of, including a set of Hiroshige's 100 Views of Edo, which were all later gifted to our museum. Robert Bloom also met Fenollosa in Japan in 1890, and probably received help from Fenollosa in collecting Japanese art. This may explain the superior quality of Bloom's collection. Robert Bloom was very fascinated by Japanese no drama, and he even took lessons in order to better illustrate it. And he collected Japanese no masks. Here, I want to show you 3 of them. And these 3 masks are from Robert Bloom's collection and gifted to the museum in 1921. Each of the 3 masks represent a different character. They are all exquisitely carved and of their kind. And the old man mask, as you can see here, the first one, is typically used to represent the fisherman or woodcutter in the first act of no drama. And the second mask, the Oto mask, is a female character, and typically it's a kyogen mask. Kyogen plays the comic interludes played between acts in the no performances to relieve the tension of the drama. Kyogen masks are typically portray nameless characters and ordinary people. They were often designed with exaggerated expressions and with a touch of humor. So here you can see this, female mask with dimples in full cheeks, and shows a very lovable and cheerful character. And the last mask is a male ghost mask. This mask was signed. It was carved by Zeikan Yoshimitsu, and who was the founder of the Deme School of No Mask Makers. And he's from Kyoto, and he was known as the last great no mask carver. No mask, the Deme School founder Zeikan, he preferred very simple and bold design, and he achieved great success through his ability to capture his mask's true essence of the character's subtle emotion and stage effect. Here you can see this ghost mask evokes a suffering and despair of this sort of forsaken spirit. And next, I will introduce Robert Bloom's paintings from his painting collection. These painting collections, there are about 21 scrolls. They used to be called alphabetic scrolls. They were in our storage without title, without any information, because they were called just scroll A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and never accessioned. And when I came to the museum, I accessioned them in 2009. And I found that many amazingly superior quality. Finally, I identified them as coming from Robert Bloom's collection. And I will only show you a few highlights. And this one is scroll sort of animal story scroll made by Ogawa Haritsu. And this is a narrative scroll, emaki, and it's a long hand scroll from the right to the left, divided into two sections. The first section depicting birds, basically the bush warblers. And the second section depicts frogs, and both animals were disguised as human poets. And basically this scroll is depicting using birds disguised as a human and engaged in a poetry contest. And the members of each team are supposed to compose poems based on their assigned topic and submit it to a judge. And it's kind of reminiscent of the similar representation in Japanese painting of the 36 immortal poets. And the choice of the warbler birds and the frogs featured in this scroll is very possibly inspired by the first imperially commissioned anthology of Japanese poetry called the Kokin Wakashu. And in the introduction of this book, Kino Tsuroyaki wrote, I quote, "How could they refrain from making poems when they listen to bush warblers in the blossoms or frogs in the water?" Unquote. So you can see why the artists choose these two animals as the main characters. And the painter Ogawa Haritsu was a poet, a painter, and a lacquer maker. And actually, there are 3 versions of this painting survive in the world. And according to the Japanese scholars, our version is the earliest and the best. So I will show you more sections of this. This first 2 sections, as you can see, is depicting the birds. This is again, the continuous section of the bird section. And now I want to show you the frog section. Here comes the frog section. And then one more. This is the highlight of the section. And I have more detailed description of this in the catalog, but because of time, I will not go through this. I will just introduce the next paintings from the Rubber Balloon collection. And this painting is by Ozawa Nankoku. This is also a painting of the Nanga school. And because of very few of Nankoku's paintings survive, so you can, this is a really rare and important work. It's a pair of hanging scrolls depicting cranes. And the painting shows us that Nankoku has a very elegant and style and a very lyrical atmosphere. And another masterpiece from the Rubber Balloon collection is this painting, hanging scroll by Sasuke Yamayoi, depicting an actor with a black mask. Actually, it's a dance, ritual dance performed in the no drama. The character can be identified as Sanbanso, translated as the third old man. It's a protagonist of the Kyogen drama. The actor appears as a dancer carrying a fan and a string of bells in his hands. And he's wearing a tall hat and a black mask, which symbolizes old age. Sasuke Yamayoi is a Kano school painter, and he studied with Kano Tsunenobu and became the official painter of the Maori clan. And his painting, again, is very rare. And here we can see how he captured the dancers' movement and the rhythm, and by the tilting of the head and the swinging of the bell. And next, I would introduce a different kind of category, the Japanese ceramics. The connection of Japanese ceramics exchange with Japan was made by Mariah Longworth Nichols and Kitaro Shirayamadani. And Mariah, she pronounced her name Mariah. Mariah, here you can see the picture of both of them. Mariah is a major contributor to Cincinnati Art Museum's Japanese ceramic collection. She created the Rookwood Company, ceramic company, in 1880. Mariah's fascination with Japanese art can be traced to her visit to the International Centennial Expo in Philadelphia in 1876. Her subsequent pursuit of Japanese aesthetics helped shape Cincinnati's helped shape Japanese mania in Cincinnati. And the Cincinnati Japanese collection is mostly come from Mariah Rookwood's collection. And Mariah also visited Japan with the intention of learning more about Japanese ceramics. In 1887, Mariah hired Shirayamadani to work in Rookwood. And Shirayamadani come from Kanazawa and first arrived the US in 1884. And he was part of the Japan village. And he joined Rookwood in 1887. He became a leading decorator in Rookwood and introduced the Japanese aesthetics to Rookwood Company and created a Japanese Rookwood style. And he also helped Rookwood collect Japanese ceramics directly from Japan. Rookwood donated about over 1,000 Japanese ceramics collected from Japan, including over about 300 teapots. And these teapots were collected by Shirayamadani from Japan in 1893. And you can see these teapots, some of them represent the native Japanese aesthetics, some of them representing a little of more Rookwood, typical Rookwood related style. And the one on the left, the gourd-shaped yellow teapot, it's from Izumo ware, which is a favorite color of Rookwood, and they try to imitate the color. And then the middle one is a Bizen ware, and you can see how later it influenced Mariah's style of Rookwood ceramic by the carved, applied sea creatures decorated on the pot. And also the last one is Kyoto ware, which shows a very subtle and beautiful texture and color of the native Japanese aesthetics. And the Rookwood also donated a lot of sake bottles and sake cup holders. We have over 400 of these. And then I want to introduce another lady who helped this exchange between Cincinnati and Japan. And this is Ezu Inagaki Sugimoto. And she wrote a book, I think you're all probably familiar, is titled A Daughter of the Samurai. And in the book, she chronicled her journey in the US. Her husband is Matsuo Sugimoto, and her husband came to the US first, and then Ezu Tsukimoto came as a young bride, and they both owned a Japanese craft store in downtown Cincinnati, at that time called the Nippon. And after her husband passed away, Ezu Tsukimoto closed the shop and donated quite a few objects to the Cincinnati Art Museum, including this doll. And this is a doll of 19th century representing a wet nurse, typically from the wealthy medieval Japanese families. They have the wet nurse, and here you can see how the subtle gesture and the gentle expression, very befitting of her position. And Tsukimoto also gave us this Oxcard model. This sort of a Oxcard model is about 1/3 of the real size, and it is very typical the older style. This Oxcard were used as a major transportation in the Heian period and later period, and this beautifully made model was produced in 1895 by Hinoyama Mazujiro. It was signed, and it's produced in Kyoto. And the cart was equipped with all the functional parts and decorated with custom-made bamboo screens at the windows, doors. And this cart was brought to Cincinnati by Ezu and Matsuo Tsukimoto. And you can see this is quite a beautiful piece. And then next, I would like to introduce our Japanese armor section, which was a very interesting exchange, also made possible by Dr. Adlan Kelsey and two Japanese ladies who was Dr. Kelsey's students. Dr. Kelsey, let me introduce. Dr. Kelsey, she was from the Connecticut, and she visited Japan as a medical missionary in 1885. And he was also he worked 5 years in Japan as both medical doctor and teachers in a female school in Yokohama. And two of her students, Kakusudo and Hana Abe, they both admired Dr. Kelsey, and because at that time in Japan, females were in very low status, and they really they expressed their wish to Dr. Kelsey that they wish they could pursue medical training and become doctors like her. So Dr. Kelsey, in order to help them accomplish this wish, brought these two young students back to Cincinnati in 1980. They settled in Cincinnati because Cincinnati has one of the very few medical schools that admitted women. And it's so the two girls applied to attend the Laura Memorial Women's Medical College. to raise funds for the two Japanese girls' education, Dr. Kelsey sold 2 suits of armor to the Cincinnati Art Museum. And the Art Museum actually helped the Dr. Kelsey create a long exhibition in January 1893, and with the intention of selling the loaned objects of Japanese art to pay for the tuition of the 2 young girls. These are picture of later they became doctor, both of them, Kakusudo and Hana Abe. And these are the 2 suits of armors the Cincinnati Art Museum purchased. The armor was also signed as by Nagatsuki from Kaga, Ishikawa. And despite the first one on the left, you can see it's elaborately, beautifully decorated suit of armor. Despite the elaborate decoration, this suit was constructed and for use in battle for a high-ranking samurai. In 1896, both Kakusudo and Hana Abe graduated from the Laurel Memorial Women's College and became pioneer Japanese female medical doctors. And the 3 ladies, doctors, then returned to Japan to create a small hospital called the Negishi Hospital in Yokohama, where they served the poor for 3 years doing charity work. Regretfully, in 1900, they were forced to leave the hospital because the Buddhist group is against Dr. Kelsey's teaching of Christianity. But the 3 people established a dispensary and continued to serve the poor until 1907, when they all returned to the US. So these 2 suits of armor documented a particularly touching tale of humanity and a unique exchange between Cincinnati and Japan. Next, I would like to introduce another person from Cincinnati that helped to bring a lot of Japanese art to Cincinnati. And this is a Cincinnati businessman called Charles Hinkle. And here I want to show you the paintings. Oh, sorry. The paintings, this is a pair of paintings. Actually, Charles Hinkle went to Japan in 1891 when he first got married and took a long honeymoon in Asia, almost a year. And during his stay, he collected a lot of Japanese objects he purchased in Japan and later either gifted or lent to the Cincinnati Art Museum. And this pair of painting by Kano Naonobu is depicting dragon and tiger. Again, this is a very nice Kano school work, and it demonstrates Naonobu's skill in traditional Chinese style painting, and the painting shows it's one of the oldest depiction of this subject in Japan. And I also want to show you a musical instrument gifted by Charles Hinkle. This is a musical instrument, a Japanese Kodo of 19th century and gifted in 1891. It's beautifully decorated with a landscape garden scene of blooming chrysanthemums and using textured gold lacquer relief for the rocks, flowers, and using red coral inlay dotting each blossom. And the whole design is extremely elegant and associated with the court. And next, I want to show you a pair of swords from Charles Hinkle's collection. This pair of swords consisted of a katana, the long sword, and a wakizashi, a short sword. A samurai would have carried them together and thrust them through his sash. The katana is signed Masatoshi. Masatoshi was the fourth son of the founder of the Mishina School and was an excellent Kyoto swordsmith. And engraved on the blade, as you can see, is a dragon and wrapped around a double-edged sword. And this motif is a symbolic description of the deity Fudomyo, and which is a Buddhist deity important to warriors because of his ferocity in defeating evil spirits. Finally, I would like to show you this Sumo Mawashi from Charles Hinkle's collection. Sumo wrestling is a popular sport in Japan, and the wrestlers wear a thick wrapped loincloth called Mawashi for both training and competition. It measures about 2 feet wide and up to almost 30 feet long, and it is folded and wrapped to form the loincloth. And depending on the ranks of the wrestlers, the mawashi can be made of cotton or silk. During the Edo period, the ceremonial silk mawashi worn by high-ranked wrestlers typically include a large apron that was often decorated with embroidery and tassels at the bottom. Today, wrestlers only wear the embroidered mawashi during the ring entering ceremony at the beginning of the tournament. This mawashi of the 19th century is made of dark blue silk, decorated with 2 large butterflies and 2 large embroidered gold butterflies and 2 Japanese characters, which literally translated as mountain man. It's an appropriate masculine ring name. And according to Charles Hinkle, this apron belonged to a defeated wrestler who, in a fit of dejection, disposed of this mawashi and Charles Hinkle's golden opportunity. So he begged for it and was successfully obtained this at that time. From this historical context I introduced here, it is clear that Cincinnati's Japanese art collection was shaped by Cincinnati's local wave of Japanese mania in the late 19th century. Cincinnati's early and direct exchanges with Japan not only reveal a little known chapter of the local history, but also demonstrates that Cincinnati should indeed be recognized as a major capital of Japonisme in the US in the 19th century. That is the end of my talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Sang, for the presentation with lots of examples of great historical artwork. and fascinating stories in it, fruit of your hard work. We also would like to thank Cincinnati Art Museum for conserving these great art collections and sharing with us. So with this, we would like to open up to the question and the Q&A session. We receive some questions already. So I'm going to read the questions, Dr. Sang.
Okay.
First one, thank you for a lovely talk. I heard that Rookwood also had other Japanese designers during World War II. Does Cincinnati Art Museum have examples of these?
Okay. Mariah tried twice to find Japanese decorators from Japan. She worked very hard. The first time failed because the Japanese person could not get a visa to come. So as far as I know, there's only one. Kitaro Shirayamadani is the only Japanese decorator in Rookwood. And so we only have his work, and his work was so successful that now the highest priced Rookwood in typical auction sales is Shiraya Madani's work. Did I answer your question?
Okay. All right, I think I'll move on to the next one. Is the Sumo Mawashi's butterflies supposed to denote the Taira clan? Looks like the Taira or Oda clan family crest, Mon.
I haven't looked into this. I am not so sure. We can try to study, but unfortunately, Charles Hinkle did not document any of the information what this Mawashi provenance or where it come from. But if someone can help me establish the relationship, that would make it even more interesting, because it's very rare for a wrestler to give away this Mawashi. So I think Charles Hinkle was so lucky, because according to his story, this wrestler was so disappointed, just threw this apron on the ground, and he immediately begged for it. So that's the story.
Okay, another question is, how long does it take to restore that art?
Which art? Which one?
That was not stated in the question, but I'm assuming the ones that you showed today.
Could this person identify which one? Is it a painting, or are we talking about a paint? Oh, the screen. Yes.
Yes.
The screen took almost a year to get back. Actually, I should mention that when the Japanese Research Cultural Institute in Tobunkan in Tokyo offered to restore for us for free, we have to fundraise for the shipping cost, which is quite expensive, as you can imagine, to ship artworks, especially large ones, with the insurance and the courier and all that. So even though Japan restored for free, for the shipping and the insurance, we got very generous help from the Japanese, from the Asian Art Society with Helen, and also a private donor. Otherwise, we couldn't accomplish this. And the restoration was very successful, because I have some detailed pictures, but I couldn't show you all of them because it shows the damage, especially near the joint, and it was how nicely it was restored. So if you're really interested, I could share with you some of the pictures from the conservation work.
Okay, another question is, can I see Shida Yamadani work exhibition at Art Museum?
Yes, we have at least in the Rookwood Gallery, you can see at least 3 to 5 pieces. If I didn't go recently, I think they are still there. At least 3 to 5 pieces are on display. And we do have about up to, we have up to 10 or more, because these objects are not under Asian department. So I'm less familiar with them. They belong to the decorative art department. But we do have one lacquer, which was very likely made by Shida Yamadani and used as a gift to someone, and I would like to display it sometime when we rotate. By the way, lacquer is considered light sensitive, so we cannot display a lacquer or scroll painting more than like 4 to 5 months. So we need to rotate them.
You mentioned that some works of art were stored in the basement of Cincinnati Art Museum. Could
Yes.
you tell more about that story?
Oh, yes. When I first came to Cincinnati, I didn't even know we have Japanese art because we didn't have a designated gallery and we didn't publish or display many, only a few. So when I came to Cincinnati as the curator, I start to organize, and it was such a nice surprise to discover such a large and fine collection. Like the alphabetic scrolls I told you, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because these paintings came in at the end of 19th century. They entered the museum in 1908. So, no, 1901. So at that time, the museum does not have anybody who can read Chinese or Japanese. And they couldn't tell not only who painted it, they couldn't tell if it's Chinese or Japanese. So all these paintings is scroll A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So what I did is I asked the museum registrar, could I accession them? And they said, we don't know who gave them to us. So how can we accession? And we may need to, if it could be a gift, it could be a loan, it could be temporarily stored in the museum. So they said we need to find out the provenance. And the procedure of identifying such object is to advertise on the newspaper. But I told them, how do you advertise? Saying, scroll A, we don't know who gave it to them to us. We don't know what it is. We don't know. So I finally convinced them because I identified, I went through all the archives and records and found out that there are, let's say, give you a random number. I think at that time it's like, say, 19 scrolls donated by Robert Bloom's estate. And these alphabetic scrolls come around that time and matches the number of scrolls missing. And that's how I finally established the provenance. And then finally, after I give each painting detailed information, who painted the artwork, who is the art, what's the title of the painting, all that created a clear illustrated list. Then the registrar was, they accepted to, and they agreed to accession them. So it's a lot of work because they came in so early. And they are, this applies to a lot of our old collections, including the armor. The armor also was, because we only have three suits of armor. And since I identified one suit with a number, so the other two, there are only two that came to us through Dr. Kelsey. So I could establish that too. So it's a reconstruction work from the storage.
Here's like a comment rather than a question. I will visit the museum to see the Japanese art. I'm very grateful to learn about the Japanese art in Cincinnati, and the cultural stories were quite interesting. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think we share this same
That's
comment.
so nice. That's make me feel so good. Thank you so much. I really welcome you all to come and visit. I wish we have more space. The problem is the space. We do not have enough space. So right now the gallery is just one of the long gallery just cut half to accommodate the Japanese collection. My dream is to create a Japanese separate gallery.
Ooh,
which
yeah, that would be
depending on
cool.
the, yes, if the museum could give me space, because Japanese gallery, as you know, the Japanese aesthetics demands space. So I'm just waiting for that.
Here's another question. Which work of Japanese art at CAM is your personal favorite and why?
Oh my, it's very difficult. I have so many. Actually, the screen is one of my favorite, the Chiyo Mizuhisa's screen, because she is a female artist and she was such a great artist. And actually, when I went to Japan and learned with the scholars, that screen is the earliest design of that particular scene of the Genji chapter 1, and it was so beautifully portrayed, and yet we barely know her name today in art history, and really how she helped educate her son to become a leading Kano school master, and how she learned from her father. And if she, at that time, if people recognize female artists, she would be a leading master, I would think. So that's one of them. And I do like a lot of unique things. Our collection, we are missing the early Japanese art, but among the later ones, one of my favorite is also the depiction of Japanese founder, sort of a Japanese goddess, that sun goddess, Amaterasu, which is a painting by Hoen Yoshiteru. A very, very beautiful depiction of Japanese goddess, how she was coming out of the cave, you know, and released the sun to the world. And that was a dramatic depiction. And I will try to rotate that painting so everyone could see it. But you can find all these images in the catalog, Japanese masterpieces of Japanese art.
All right, that's good to know. We have one more question, and it says, the furniture collection with Japanese emblems is especially wonderful. How do these connect to earlier pieces of Japanese art in the museum collection?
The furniture?
Yeah, maybe they're talking about
Oh, you mean the Oxcard? Which one are you referring to?
Probably. He did not say.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming
Collection
they
with the
both.
Japanese. Okay, so Japanese emblems. So which one is that?
Yeah. Thank you for.
Not
yeah.
this. Is it this one? This is the only large furniture kind of piece.
Right. If the person who asked the question, if you could clarify the furniture portion, is that the Oxcard or
The fiery collection.
screen.
FR.
yeah, Fry collection.
Fry?
FRYE.
FRYE, Fry collection.
FRYE? I don't quite know which one. Sorry.
We can go back.
Is it a painting or is it a screen or sorry, I didn't quite get that question. I think this is the only large furniture like piece.
With the
That's true,
Japanese
with the emblems. Yeah.
Is
With
They look
Japanese?
like the Oxcart.
Yeah, okay. The Oxcard, oh yeah, it does have some on the roof. There are some, it's kind of difficult for me to confirm each of this family Hmong kind of thing that need a further research. So I have not tried to do that. But this is a beautiful piece, really. I put it on display.
Okay, it says Roger Fry's family bedroom furniture.
Oh, that is put into the Asian gallery, but that belongs to decorative art. It's not considered Asian. Actually, that it's a bedroom suite. Okay, that was designed by a Cincinnati furniture company. And trying to imitate Japanese style. So it is it's an interesting piece because when they try to copy the Japanese kimono, the ladies, and actually if you look carefully, you see they have a broad shoulders and the long arms and tall figures. They look sort of a little Western to me. But anyway, that was a Westerner trying to copy the Japanese style. So it looks a little foreign, but it is interesting how at that time they interest. It's another aspect of how. Yes, I'm glad you asked this question. It's another aspect of the exchange because there is a Japanese mania in the late 19th century. So that's why the furniture is imitating Japanese design from Japanese prints, I think. Very good question. Sorry, I didn't recognize at first.
So, okay, quickly. So, or did the person mean the sword furniture collection? So there's a sword furniture collection. Is there?
Oh yes, there is a sword furniture collection. We have about almost 300 sword fittings. And these sword furniture, we displayed a small portion in the gallery. And they are very interesting. They are all collected by one person. And this person in the late 19th century specialized in collecting sword fittings. And he became the largest collection of one type. I think it's Kashira or one particular sword fitting. And he collected such a large one. And then later he donated to all of them to the art museum. So, and many of them are signed pieces. And they really like jewelry in the West. It's carefully handcrafted. It's beautiful. And you have time, please look at them in the gallery. And we have a lot more in storage too.
Okay. Wonderful. So it's about time. So this is the end of the Q&A session. And again, thank you so much for wonderful presentation. I think we all cannot wait going back to the Cincinnati Art Museum to look for these items. So there's one more. Yeah. All right. So thank you all so much for your participation and then great questions. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Dr. Sang, and thank you so very much for your attendance.
I enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to visit.
Yes, we'll see you there.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.